Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, students in the South Bronx in District 7 are currently facing the lowest literacy rates in all of New York City. The Senior VP and Executive Director of City Year New York tells us more about their efforts to support New York City students and schools. Then Drawdown's Neighborhood Tri-State is the latest in a series of climate change solutions, passing the mic to climate heroes in various communities. The Director of Storytelling and Engagement at Project Drawdown sits with us to share all the details. After that, Bronx Works has been serving the community for 50 years, and they are continuing that support with various entry-level job openings. The Vice President of Human Resources at Bronx Works gives us more information about these amazing opportunities. And finally, Room to Grow is on a mission to help support low-income families with childcare. The Executive Director for Room to Grow tells us more about their efforts. So stay tuned to all this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello everyone, I'm Kibin Alleyne and today is Tuesday, December 19th. You are now watching Open, a program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. Before we dive into our program, BronxNet is thrilled to mark 30 years of positive impact in the Bronx. Our latest venture, the BronxNet Media and Technology Studios in the South Bronx, represents our most significant step yet in bridging the digital gap. However, we can't do it alone. We need your support. Your contribution ensures access to cutting-edge studios, top-quality equipment, and professional development opportunities for individuals of all ages in the Bronx. Join us in shaping a brighter future in technology and media. Let's work together to make the Bronx a better place for everyone. Donate today at bronxnet.org/donate, and let's create a lasting impact together. For the first time since the height of the pandemic, elementary school students were required to take standardized tests, revealing the Bronx had the lowest literacy rates in all of New York City. 70% of Black and Latino students in the Bronx failed to show proficiency on both their English and math exams. Joining me to discuss the reasons for this finding and how their organization, City Year New York, aims to combat this is Senior VP and Executive Director Quamid Francis. Quamid, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much, Kevin. It's great to be here.
Now, can we first learn a little bit more about City Year, the organization? Can you tell us your overall goal and the mission of City Year?
Yeah, absolutely. So City Year is a trailblazing, youth-powered organization with a dual mission of, one, expanding educational equity for students furthest from opportunity, and developing diverse leaders who can work across lines of difference through our national service programming and in partnership with AmeriCorps. At City Year New York, our AmeriCorps members who we develop as student success coaches, serve across 17 community schools to create inclusive environments where all of our students can fulfill their potential and make an impact. Our student success coaches, their primary responsibilities are to, build strong trust and relationships with students and their families by providing kids a caring adult to show up for them and advocate on their behalf, ensuring that their needs are met. They also support students' social, emotional, and academic learning by helping them overcoming challenges as they arise without disengaging from school. In addition, we provide kids fun reasons to show up, from after-school activities ranging from studio art to Lego robotics programming to incentive programs like attend dances for students with strong attendance records. Additionally, City Year New York is the lead community-based organization in 16 of our 17 partner schools, mostly concentrated in East New York, East Harlem, and of course the South Bronx.
So I want to talk about just, what are some challenges, City Year faces, I guess, in regard to education in New York City, but, particularly in the Bronx?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned at the top, District 7, one of the districts we're in, has one of the lowest literacy rates in all school districts across the city. And, that's a challenge for us. We see to it as part of our mission is to, build on the natural talents and gifts that our students bring to school. And part of that is, literacy success. But in order to get toward that success in terms of improving those literacy outcomes, you need access, right? And that's why we held one of the largest book fairs in all of the city a number of weeks ago to ensure that all parents, families, students have access to books, right? To begin and to do that work of reading and engaging with words and in storytelling outside of the classroom as well as inside of the classroom.
Now, can you tell us a little bit more about that book fair actually, and how was the turnout, and what you hope people got from that experience?
Yeah, it was a huge turnout. I think we had over like 14,000 books. And, there was, close to or over 100 people there. A lot of great just momentum that was felt, in the building. People excited that they have access to all these resources that they typically don't. And, something that's, particular about City or New York is we support schools that are traditionally resource starved. So it's no secret why, we are in District 7. So yeah, the turnout was great, and we're happy to know that that's a catalytic opportunity to create conditions for educational success and outcomes as it relates to literacy.
Now, I think these are amazing opportunities that are being, had in the Bronx because, as I mentioned, standardized test results show that 70% of New York City's Black and Latino students struggle with math and, of course, reading. These results come after pandemic learning. So, how did the pandemic affect student learning?
Well, it certainly exacerbated it, right? The research says that, when students are connected to at least one caring adult, they're likely to thrive socially, emotionally, as well as academically. And so, what the pandemic resulted in is the removal of that connection in the classroom in an academic setting. And so you can do really interesting things with technology, virtual learning, so on and so forth. But there's nothing that substitutes that in-person interaction, that in-person connection that students have, especially with their city year near peer coach. And so what we've realized is that there's been long-standing challenges as it relates to literacy and math, curricular and instruction at schools, but the pandemic illuminated the different barriers that students from areas like the South Bronx face on a daily basis. Those barriers to that enables their learning and development. And so one of the things that we've been incessantly focused on is how do we figure out what is the baseline right now coming out of the pandemic, and how can we continue to marshal our resources to ensure that all students are supported in the way that they deserve to be.
Now, I'm curious to know, what did City Year look like during the pandemic, and how did it affect how you were able to reach out to these students, or was there a pause on that, and could that also have impacted their education level?
Yeah, so one of the things that is unique about City Year is our agility, because we have the strength of our human capital relative to other community-based organizations who are also doing great work. Our AmeriCorps members, student success coaches, these are 18 to 25-year-olds. Most of them around age 22, 23, have a college degree, and they are more closer in age to the students than their teachers are. And so that bond and that near peer model that is unique to City Year allowed for students to connect with their coaches, their City Year coaches, during the pandemic in a virtual setting. And we were able to uncover various different things that are going on in the home and how we might meet those needs, whether it's raising funds to provide food, basic needs in the household to our families, things that have grown since the pandemic has been declared over. So our ability to rapidly mobilize and shift how we do our learnings through the partnership with and generous support of our corporate sponsors allowed us to not miss a beat, really, even in a virtual setting.
Now, when we talk about the Bronx in regard to pretty much anything, we tend to talk about it as like the entire Bronx. But in this situation, it is particularly District 7 that is struggling, in education in regard to math and reading. So, why do you think this particular area is falling behind in education? And what are some things that maybe we're not seeing that's happening in the area that's resulting in these low scores in math and reading?
Yeah, well, there are different determinants to this situation, and in District 7 in the South Bronx, in particular, um, you have to focus on the whole entire ecosystem, right? What are the health outcomes? What are the educational outcomes for sure? What is the take up rate for social services in that district, right? And so you have a whole host of issues that are compounded and really concentrated in District 7, and so that has a material effect on a child's learning and development, right? And they bring all those different issues and challenges with them to the classroom, and that's where we are able to uncover those challenges. And that's the beauty of community schools, right? Because it works. It serves as that one-stop shop whereby families and students can get all of their needs met, right? For example, we know that close to 90% or so of the parents of our students qualify for or at or below the federal poverty limit. We know that about 90% of our students qualify for free or reduced lunch. So those are huge data points that allows us to assess, okay, what types of resources and what volume of resources and what's the pacing of resource that we need to provide, and we're able to do so with those data points. And so, um, you know, that these areas are areas that are traditionally historically resource starved, and again the pandemic has only illuminated those barriers, that's particular to these to the South Bronx.
Now, you kind of talked about community schools, and I want to know what are the long-term benefits of kind of being in an area that has community schools and having programs like City Year in these communities that struggle with education. And as you mentioned, for a very long time, long before the pandemic, this has been a issue that we've seen historically in low-income Black and Latino neighborhoods. So, what are the benefits of having something like City Year in these neighborhoods?
Yeah, I'll start with community schools first. So, studies have shown that, community schools that have a community school model, the students are more likely, I think, 5 percentage points higher than non-community schools to graduate than those without community schools. Nationally, schools with City Year um, are 2 to 3 times more likely to improve on math and English assessments. I could tell you in City Year, New York in particular, as it relates to literacy, we've increased in our partner schools sixfold the proficiency rate in literacy over the past couple of years. In math, we've increased it fourfold in the past couple of years. And in addition to that, um, one of the ways that we assess our own abilities is through our administrator and teacher surveys. And 98% of our partners teachers agree that our student success coaches, a City Year model, has fostered a positive learning environment and have contributed to the material effects, the improvement of literacy rates and math rates in their partners in our schools. And so the evidence is there. It's overwhelming. Community schools work. What student success coaches do in community schools work. And it's something that should be scaled, citywide for sure, and absolutely statewide.
Now, can you quickly just let us know how does City Year assist with education while building community in schools that they work with? Because I think that's very important.
Yeah, so I mean, we have in-class instruction. So one of the things that we do is our coaches are paired with our teachers, and so whatever the teachers' instructions are in terms of a particular lesson plan, our student success coaches are able to model that, walking around the classroom and in demonstrating or re-emphasizing the learning that's being had and that's being taught by the teachers. In addition, we run after-school programmings, right? And so the same homework assignments or whatever particular assignment there may be, our student success coaches are running those after school tutoring sessions to reinforce those learnings that happen in the classroom, helping our students with their homework such that when they go home, they don't even have to worry about it. And then, once they're done with their homework, we have different fun activities, again, to make learning fun.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us and kind of giving us a little insight on why we're seeing this in the Bronx. So, thank you.
Thanks so much, Kibin. Take care.
If you would like to learn more about City Years, New York's effort, please go to their website, www.cityyear.org/new-york, or follow them on social media at City Year New York. Don't go away, we'll be back with more Open right after this. Welcome back. With a mission to help the world stop climate change, Project Drawdown uses several methods and opportunities to engage different audiences and amplify new voices. One of their most recent efforts was a docuseries highlighting the work of climate heroes around the tri-state area. Before we meet our guests, we have a short clip about the new docuseries. Let's take a look.
My name is Christian Rodriguez.
My name is Bilal Walker.
I am Sandra Medeiros.
And my name is Anthony Diaz.
My name is Jennifer Seda.
My name's Amanda Appleson.
My name is Doreen Abubakar.
I'm Sochi Garcia.
I'm Alex Rodriguez.
My name is Haley Miranda.
My name is Natalie Agosto-Filion.
And I'm helping reach Drawdown.
And I am helping reach Drawdown.
And I'm helping reach Drawdown
by giving out food and water to my community.
By advocating and empowering for youth that can't.
By linking together community champions and government officials.
Empowering our community to speak up for ourselves.
By turning refuse into resource.
Through urban farming and asthma awareness education.
By facilitating different volunteer events. By making plant-based food easier to access.
By organizing for environmental justice.
By empowering BIPOC and immigrant people to be unique environmental change agents.
Using placemaking for urban environmental connections.
The Director of Storytelling and Engagement for Project Drawdown, Matt Scott, joins me to discuss this effort. Matt, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Kibin.
Of course.
I'm so honored to talk with the audience here today.
Yeah, so I'm so excited to learn a little bit more about the organization. Can you just first tell us, what is Project Drawdown and how did it begin?
Yeah, so Project Drawdown is a global nonprofit climate solutions resource and actually was founded in 2014 as a book project. In 2017, the Drawdown book, which you could find here, was released and became a New York Times bestseller, identifying nearly 100 climate solutions in the world today. But today, how Project Drawdown is different than that book project in 2017 is that while folks still continue to be informed by the book and to learn from it, we're really focused on equipping communities with what they need to stop climate change in the spirit of our mission as quickly, safely, and equitably as possible. And so we do that through a few different ways, in part by focusing on climate solutions and continuing to update those by supporting leaders who are doing that work, but also through the work that I do and lead, which is focused on promoting new voices and new narratives.
Now, what I thought was so interesting was the equitably part. So, how does the organization achieve this mission of helping the world stop climate change equitably? And what does that mean?
Yeah, so I think, when it comes to equity overall, that's a constant process and constant journey that this climate world is on. I'll say for myself that one of the reasons I got engaged in the climate world and joined Project Drawdown 3 years ago, launching our Stories program, was seeing just the lack of diversity, the lack of a focus on justice and equity within climate conversations. So the climate world is still learning and growing in that sense. One of the ways that Project Drawdown centers equity, though, is through our Drawdown Stories program, which we'll talk a lot about today. But we're really focused on centering those conversations on equity, on justice, and really allowing underrepresented voices to guide the conversation and guide the stories that we tell around climate change and climate solutions.
Now, Project Drawdown aims to promote new climate narratives and new voices, which you have mentioned, and I think that's a huge part of, the organization's mission. How does the organization do this?
Yeah, so I joined the organization 3 years ago, starting the Drawdown Stories program. And what I always share with folks is that initially the idea was just that the organization would share stories in some kind of amorphous way around climate change and solutions. And I myself, as a young person, a Black person, a queer person, decided we need to focus these stories on communities that aren't at the table, that aren't represented. Because one of the things that's so important for viewers to understand when it comes to climate is that the communities that are most vulnerable to the impacts of the climate crisis, that are first and worst impacted by the climate crisis, including Black communities, Indigenous communities, communities of color, low-income communities, are also so often the least represented in climate dialogue, in climate conversation. We see this with so many issues, but this is also true in the climate space. And it's really damning when we look at the realities that so many underrepresented communities or environmental justice communities face today. And not being at the table means that you're not having your needs met. It means that you're not being integrated into the conversation, and it only perpetuates the problems. And so through the work that we do at Drawdown Stories, it's really focused on bringing in voices and in the process building power in those voices, in those community members, in those climate heroes, while also shaping culture, helping people see the diversity of folks that are at the table, that do have the power to contribute to solutions, and of course, changing behavior, which is ultimately what we need to do individually and systemically to stop climate change.
Now, I kind of want to expand on that a little bit more because I think it's a very important point, and it's part of the driving force behind the docuseries, which we're going to get into a little bit. But can you just talk about the history of being underrepresented in these conversations, and what does that look like? Because when I think of it, I think of how people often think it's expensive to go green, and maybe some communities can't afford to do that. Is that what we're seeing, or is it playing out in a different way?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you bring that up. And it's one thing I think that's really important and fascinating when it comes to the climate conversation is that there are so many misconceptions about what it takes to be green, what it takes to be an environmentalist, what it takes to show up and, one, have a sustainable lifestyle yourself, but then to contribute to sustainable lifestyles. And the thing that I focus on, less than the individual action piece, like, buying an electric vehicle or fully embracing a vegan or plant-based lifestyle, which are all really important things and tied to climate solutions, is that I really focus on helping folks see that they could play a role. So just taking a step back when it comes to the history of underrepresentation, I mean, from a personal perspective, I'll say I grew up around a dinner table where my mom, who was a teacher, a professor, who would talk about social inequality, talk about social justice, would bring home these conversations to our dinner table about the realities of our worlds, where Black and brown communities are often receiving the brunt of inequality. And so when it comes to climate change, we talk about inequality, but I think it's also really important to see patterns of inequality across the spectrum, not just when it comes to climate change and otherwise. And so Robert Bullard, who's the father of environmental justice, is a good person to look to for a lot of great learning and understanding when it comes to the problem overall. But, we again, like I said, we've seen that so often Black and brown communities aren't integrated in the decision making, aren't represented among leadership, aren't receiving investment to move their solutions forward. And that's part of the problem, because that results in Black and brown communities being the worst impacted. And so we've seen these problems for the longest while in our history, but through storytelling and narrative, hopefully we could help people become aware of them and change the narrative and change how we operate when it comes to climate change, and who's able to be at the table and able to be part of solutions.
Now, in an effort to kind of change the narrative, I want to talk about the docuseries. Can you tell us a little bit more about that project, and what was your role in assisting the creation of the documentary?
Yeah, so Drawdown's Neighborhood is a climate change short documentary series passing the mic to voices that often go unheard. And I am the creator of the series, the producer of the series, and the host of the series, which I'm so proud of, because we still need more and more stories that bring in and center underrepresented voices. And so Drawdown's Neighborhood overall, beyond just being a docuseries, is a storytelling and engagement initiative where, yes, we present these episodes of the series, and I'm so proud to share that we've put out 48 episodes to date from a number of cities, including Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Georgia, the Twin Cities, New Orleans, and most recently, Newark, New Jersey, New Haven, Connecticut, and the Bronx as part of this tri-state series. And with Drawdown's Neighborhood, we focus on, again, not just putting out these stories, but providing engagement resources to help folks discover solutions and take action in their own way. Because as I found myself, this world of climate change and climate solutions, especially when you approach it just with the statistics, just with the data, just the science, can be really overwhelming and not accessible to everyone or relatable to everyone. And these stories are really focused on making climate change and climate solutions accessible, relatable, understandable, and I think most importantly, human.
Right. Well, I want to take a moment to highlight one of our climate heroes from the Bronx, which I think is super exciting. It's Jennifer Seda from the Bronx River Alliance. Can you tell us a little bit more about her work and the effort, she and her organization does to address climate change in the Bronx?
Yeah, so Jennifer, who is a phenomenal change maker, one of the climate heroes that we featured in the Bronx. Jennifer is the volunteer program assistant at the Bronx River Alliance, which works to preserve and restore the Bronx River and integrate climate solutions into the Bronx River environment and how we interact with it in the Bronx. And there are a few things that I really just admire and appreciate about Jennifer in her story. One of them, which you'll see if you check out her episode at drawdown.org/neighborhood, of course, is that Jennifer entered this work not as an environmentalist or someone who cared the most about climate change. Like, she did care about climate, was exposed to that as someone who grew up in the Bronx, but also has family in Puerto Rico, which is very much involved with nature and getting engaged. She joined the field of climate out of necessity. As a vegan who lost her job at a restaurant due to the pandemic, Jennifer found that getting involved with community gardens and planting her food and embracing plant-rich diets was one of the ways that she not only supported her lifestyle, but also could support her community. And the other thing I really appreciate about Jennifer is that she never studied environmental science or any topic related to climate change. So often people think they need to be scientists, they need to be experts, they need to be environmentalists in the traditional way, when something that I'm so proud that we featured in Drawdown's Neighborhood through Jennifer's story and beyond is that there's so many people who contribute to solutions who aren't even, environmentalists or don't think about climate change on a day-to-day basis. That's what matters, that we welcome a range of people to show up and belong. And then the final thing I love about Jennifer's story is just how she's really focused on sharing her story and changing the narrative, which is so important when we look at, looking at this tri-state series, for example. Looking at Newark, New Jersey, which is often a site of so much dumping from the state of New Jersey and the surrounding area. I grew up in New Jersey near Newark and knew that reality and knew that experience. And it's important that we change the narrative there. With New Haven, Connecticut, so often it's associated with Yale University, but New Haven is so much more than an Ivy League university. And I'm proud that we could share the stories of the people there. And with the Bronx, I mean, there are a number of narratives that are discussed within the Drawdowns neighborhood episodes with Jennifer, but also Haley Miranda and Amanda Appleson, where, we really need to go beyond the identity of folks in these communities, including the Bronx, just being victims or villains. Like, we can be heroes. And that's one thing that Jennifer really hits home.
And I love that you said that, we as in everybody. And, I just think it's so amazing and so much of what you talked about. So I truly appreciate you taking the time. It was wonderful to meet you. And thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation.
Thank you so much, Kibin.
If you want to learn more about Project Drawdown's docuseries, please go to their website at www.drawdown.org/neighborhood or follow them on social media at Project Drawdown. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.
Only 57% of New York City high school students are college ready by their senior year. %5 of high school graduates either have no plans to attend college or are uncertain that they will ever attend. %34 of young adults don't go to college because they can't afford it. Discover what's possible. BronxNet's education programs, internships, and opportunities help engage and inspire Bronx youth and beyond to pursue their passions. Be a part of the BronxNet family. Whether you're interested in our shows, joining a class, or donating to support our mission, visit bronxnet.org to learn more.
Welcome back. Dedicated to addressing challenges facing Bronx residents, the organization BronxWorks now offers a large number of job openings to support the community. Their mission is to provide learning opportunities that can potentially lead to successful long-term careers for many Bronxites. Vice President of Human Resources at BronxWorks, Felicia Ricketts-Samuels, joins me now to discuss these new opportunities. Felicia, thank you so much for joining me.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm aware of BronxWorks because we had the pleasure of, doing, a few events at the space. But for those who don't know, can you just explain, what is BronxWorks and its overall mission?
BronxWorks is a community-based organization that is focused on sustaining lives as it relates to folks who are struggling with housing, with food insecurity. We provide a litany of services from the southern region of the Bronx to the most northern part of the Bronx. We're located in every community in the Bronx, so we definitely believe in giving back to the borough of the Bronx.
Now, as you mentioned, your organization remains very active in the Bronx, and so that's why, myself and probably many others had the privilege of kind of understanding and seeing some of the work that you do. What are some of the ways your organization supports the Bronx residents? So can you just give us some examples of things that you've done, probably over the year, just to give us a little bit more insight about the work that you do?
They do an annual giving back to families. We have food pantries. We're always providing services to the children in the neighborhood. We offer after-school programming, so people are very well versed about what BronxWorks does. We are really an agency that believes in giving back. We have immigration services for legal services. So we have a wide spread of what we do as far as giving back. We have a senior center, multiple senior centers, so we are cultivating seniors and activities and community outreach. We also have opportunities where we are able to work with people very closely on career job readiness through workforce development services here in the Bronx. We also do tax services, so there's a wide range of services that we actually provide.
Now, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think that was like maybe the one thing that I didn't know about BronxWorks is that you helped, with career readiness. And I think that's pretty amazing. So that kind of leads into, my next topic of how, right now obtaining employment can be a challenge for many people. Can you just talk about this struggle and, and how it may affect Bronx residents?
I think that I want folks to know that a part of your career pathing is understanding your passion to be in human services. You can take someone who's retired and they want to come back to the workforce. They have a skill set that's unmatched. We want to tap into those skills by figuring out what your passions are, what population you want to serve. Is it with children? Is it with adults? Is it with housing? Is it with seniors? Where are you best suited to work at? And I think there are folks in the Bronx who have a huge skill set that has not been tapped into. So BronxWorks, we're looking to bring in people who are passionate about working with folks who look like you. Folks who understand the struggles of being in the Bronx and knowing that we're a vibrant borough.
Now, you said something that I think is so important. It's folks that look like you.
Yes.
Can you just talk about, the importance of that type of representation, especially in a field where you're doing things that are like services, very sensitive topics for a lot of people. What is the importance of having people from your community help those within the community?
We look at this as a neighboring conversation. The folks who live next to you, Black and brown folks, who are born and bred in the Bronx, people who understand the neighborhoods, they understand the culture, food culture, culture around music and theater. I think that if people understand where you come from, you have a way to talk to them where they understand you can meet them where they are. You understand where their families come from and the struggles that brought them here. We're a melting pot in the Bronx. I think that if you understand people, you can come into a place like BronxWorks and really find your footing and find a way to grow.
And I think it helps make people feel a little bit more comfortable,
yes,
in these sensitive, times of their lives. So I think that's amazing, and I definitely wanted to highlight that. Now, as mentioned, BronxWorks aims to mitigate the issue of, maybe the lack of employment that so many people are facing with several job opportunities within the organization, which I think is also very interesting that it's within the organization and not just sending people out just to fulfill a job. So can you just talk a little bit more about those opportunities and how it's actually within the organization?
We have a workforce development department that helps folks in the community, and we also partner with them for career fairs, large ones, where my team in HR comes out with other folks in program to make sure we're soliciting folks who are interested in this level of work. We're looking for case managers, folks in social work, teachers, youth workers, safety monitors, intake specialists, folks who understand that this work is important and that a part of what you do is not simply a 9-to-5 job. This is about giving passion to folks who look like you, meeting them where they are, being relatable, and not just talking about the job, talking about the career behind the job.
And where can people actually find access to those postings or learn a little bit more about those positions?
BronxWorks.org is our regular standard website, but we are posted throughout social media, LinkedIn, of course, Facebook. We have a huge social media presence. And we also, you can find us at all the career fairs at schools and other community-based organization events.
Now, what I think is so important that I really want to highlight is all the positions that you mentioned. They sound like positions that are, can lead to long-term careers. And so often when we talk about employment, people tend to just give out just jobs, right? And there's a difference between just having a job and having a career that, can actually lead to growth. Can you just talk about that and why it was important to kind of have something that would lead to something that's a little bit more long-term as opposed to maybe a short-term solution?
BronxWorks, we are a full life cycle organization. There are folks who come to us straight out of high school as youth workers, work their way up, and they may become an advocate of some sort. They may go back to school to become a teacher or a teacher assistant. So we believe in the full life cycle of career pathing. We don't sell jobs, we sell opportunities. So when someone comes into an organization like BronxWorks, we're expecting them to be a part of a larger mission. So we want to understand what their needs are, what their concerns are, where they see themselves in 10 years, 15 years. We have folks here who've been here at the agency for 25, 30 years, and they started here maybe as a program assistant. Now they're a director of social services. So again, we believe in cultivating folks, providing guidance around that, mentorship and coaching around how you get to the next level in your career. And BronxWorks can offer that.
And I also want to highlight that it's entry-level positions, which I know for anybody looking for a job, sometimes that is the hardest thing to find because sometimes there's just not often that many entry-level positions. Usually when you're looking for a job, they want a director or a manager, and starting out and where you begin is so important. Can you just talk about a little bit, those entry-level positions and, having that opportunity available to anybody, who qualifies for them?
I like the word point of entry. Point of entry is when someone who's enthusiastic about getting into human services will take on, say, a safety monitor job as a security person, get their certifications, they may become a fire guard later or a manager or a supervisor, but their point of entry is coming in, understanding that they are looking to give back in this capacity. You're not here for the money, you're here for career growth and the passion around how you help others. So I think that for our openings, we do have point of entry positions, but we look at them as a way to enter into a career path. So we can set you up for success, not failure.
Now, who is eligible for these positions and how can they apply? I also know, are there any educational requirements or any experience that is needed? Can you just talk a little bit more about those type of details?
Well, some of the jobs will ask for a bachelor's degree in human services, social work, or psychology for case management. Some don't need that. Some need more life experience or an associate's degree. Some jobs require a high school diploma and or a GED or life experience. I think that what we bring to the table is the fact that we're a person or people who are looking to change how things are positioned around case management. If we understand we're working with a family who is struggling, how to make them feel comfortable to talk to us, that's a life skill. That's not an education, that's a life skill. Being able to ask people how they're feeling about things, to meet them where they are. I think that the one thing we do really well at BronxWorks is take someone's skills and match them to the right job.
Now that's actually going to lead into my next question. What are some tips people can use to find out what career path or position is right for them? Because I know that people may have an idea of what they want to do, and then they realize maybe this is not the path they should have taken. So, what tips would you give to somebody who's kind of still struggling with that?
I think that what I would say to a person, please ask questions. I think that we should not lean on our own understanding about what we think a job would entail. I think you can see a job posting, but there's always more to it than what's written. You want to make sure you have the skills, knowledge, and abilities to do the job, and also the courage to step out on faith sometimes about what you're looking to do in your career. I think that there are young folks out there who are enthusiastic about getting involved with youth services. They should explore those opportunities with their counselor, their mentors, their coaches, their college professors, and they should also look online to figure out what people are doing. Ask some questions, reach out.
Right, because people have ideas of what it takes to work in these fields, and because they may be new to it, they don't know. So I definitely wanted to highlight maybe you should do a little bit of research and figure out what you're doing before you jump into it. So I think that's great. Now BronxWorks, as we talked about, throughout the entire interview, has done so much. So how can people support the BronxWorks mission?
I think they should support by going to the website and possibly volunteering, doing some community service work. We often, of course, we're always looking for donations, but I think it's more about donating your time to figure out how you can help your neighborhood where you're from in the Bronx and how you support an organization that has been around a long time. We recently had a birthday. We're 50 years old, so I'm really excited about that. We've been celebrating all year. It's a big, we're definitely a footprint in the neighborhood. We're a footprint in the global landscape of New York City. BronxWorks is not going anywhere fast. It's been a long time.
Right, and 50 years is pretty amazing, just in the little bit of time that I've seen, some of the work that BronxWorks has done. I could only imagine, how the impact it's had on the community for over 50 years. So I want to say congratulations to that. I think that's, amazing. And it's just so wonderful to see some of the work that you're doing. So, I truly appreciate you coming here and having this conversation. And I appreciate learning a little bit more about BronxWorks. So
thank you for having me.
Of course. If you are interested in any of the opportunities to work with BronxWorks, please go to their website at www.bronxworks.org. And don't forget to follow them on social media at BronxWorks. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more Open right after this. Welcome back. Room to Grow is a nonprofit organization running a 3-year program designed to provide essential support to families raising babies born into low-income communities. The organization offers parents and caregivers childcare necessities, strategies, and support to promote their child's development. Executive Director for Room to Grow, Sandra Medeiros, joins me to discuss. Sandra, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Now, can you tell us a little bit more about Room to Grow and how did the organization begin?
Yes, so Room to Grow is an organization that believes that all children and families, regardless of their circumstances, deserve the support and resources to thrive, especially in the child's early years. And we are a nonprofit organization with offices here in New York, as well as Boston, and soon Chicago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Room to Grow was founded in 1998 by Julie Burns, who was working as a social worker at the time with school-aged children. And throughout her work, what she was learning and seeing as she was supporting the young people is that so many of the challenges they were experiencing could be prevented with the right supports very early in life. And so from that, Room to Grow was born, and 25 years later, here we are.
Well, I want to say congrats on expanding. I think this, already it sounds like an amazing organization. So I could just imagine how much it's going to help people, across the country. So it's wonderful that you're expanding.
Thank you.
Now, I want to learn a little bit more about, the choice to focus primarily on infants and toddlers.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the times people just group children and young people all in one thing. But why did you want to focus on, very small, infants and toddlers?
Yes. Those early years are just critical for, children's development and establishing a foundation for future success in school and in life. And so during the first 3 years of life, really 3 to 5 years of life, 80% of the child's brain is developing. In the early years, there are, I believe it's 1 million neural connections happening in the brain every second. And so the right support and the foundation for children and families during that time is so critical. And the support really comes by way of making sure that families have the resources that they need, all of the baby and toddler items that little ones kind of come with to think about sleep and clothing, and they're growing every 3 months. So just making sure that they have not just the physical resources, but for families and caregivers, the emotional resources to really guide them in their parenting journey, to affirm all of the amazing work that they're already doing as parents that oftentimes we forget when we have little ones. And then the connections to other resources that they need in order to meet their goals as families. And so we decided to start from the beginning and make sure that families have everything that they need in order to thrive and meet their goals as a family.
Now, what I think is so interesting is that we're looking at this this age group, infant to toddler before school. I'm curious to know, what are the effects of poverty, on that demographic before they enter school? Because we usually look at it from maybe K through 12 and see how poverty affects them, educationally that way. But, how is it affecting them, before they enter school?
Yeah. The research shows us that as early as 2 months of age, we can already see gaps between children living in low-income circumstances and their more affluent peers in terms of how children are developing physically, cognitively, etc. And we see that by the time kiddos enter kindergarten, oftentimes they're already 1 year below their peers in school. And those gaps, we see and know that unless they're intentionally supported and targeted in those early years of life, they can persist throughout a child's K to 12 education and in many ways exacerbate. And so, the research also shows us that those gaps can be mitigated if you really start early and support little ones to start their school journey as ready as they can and continue to support them throughout.
Now, can you talk a little bit more about Room to Grow's 3-year program?
Yes. So what it looks like concretely is that families, parents, caregivers start working with us during the birthing parent's third trimester of pregnancy. And in that very first visit, we're talking about what to expect when the little ones arrive. It's really ensuring that families have all of the support that they need for the birth, and that they know what they should expect, what they could advocate for, make sure that their network right from the beginning is as strong as they need. And then after the child is born, parents are visiting our family centers once every 3 months, just right before that next spurt of development. And we're talking about, parenting questions. We're talking about the family's goals. We're assessing how the child is developing and helping to coach parents on what to do to support that next phase. In addition, we're sharing with families the resources that they need to support their development. So toys, books, equipment, oh my gosh, feeding essentials, you name it. Over the course of the 3 years in the program, the retail value of the material goods that we provide to families is the equivalent of $10,000. And so families can focus their resources at home on other things, and we're helping to offset what can be, very expensive items through our program. And then, we're also providing families with warm connections to other resources in the community, like what's next after our program, preschool, et cetera, housing, issues of food security, to really help families ensure that they have what they need in order to meet their own goals.
Now, what I think is really interesting, or probably even unique, is that you're supporting families before the baby even enters, the world, which I think is amazing. What is the purpose or like the importance of like starting even that early before they even enter the world?
Yes, it's our program is a 2-generation model, and I think for one of many reasons, it's why it works and is effective. I think once you can start working with the family to ensure that they know that they have a support network that's going to be with them for at least 3 years. And we support families and encourage them to stay connected and in touch with us after they graduate from our program. When the child turns 3, they know that they have that support that's going to be with them on their journey. And I think not only in providing the education and coaching and the items, that you have someone else that you can kind of come to with questions to celebrate milestones, and just, from the very beginning, which can feel like such a scary time, especially if you don't have all of the support and resources that you need. Just knowing that you're going to have someone there on their journey goes a long way. And our families tell us, 90% of our families in our program tells us that Room to Grow helps us achieve their goals as parents and helps them reduce stress. And stress is such an important piece in parenting, particularly in the early years. We know that if stress is reduced, families and parents and caregivers can form healthy relationships. It supports attachment, and all of those things really help little ones developing brains in their bodies. And so we start as early as we can.
Now, we were able to see a clip of this space, and it looks really very beautiful. Can you just talk about, the experience families will have when they walk through those doors?
Yes, I love this question. I'm so glad you're asking, because our space is so intentional. Like, it's called Room to Grow for a reason, and that room, for many reasons, but that room is very intentional. We strive to create a warm, welcoming environment where all families and children love to come to. It's bright, it's airy, there's lots of windows, there's lots of toys. There's dedicated space for private conversations that families have with their dedicated clinician. There's a beautiful boutique of baby items and equipment that parents are co-selecting alongside other program team members. And, we really want it to be a space and have designed it to be a space that communicates love, encouragement, support, joy. And so, I often joke and say that it's kind of like in a movie, a character, like the setting can be a character.
Right.
In the movie, Room to Grow is an additional team member. Our space is an additional team member in that support.
Now, I want to expand on some of the programs offered. Can you just talk a little bit about how there's a program for every family?
Yes, every family. So we, work with nearly 700 families in New York, and it's our goal and aspiration to grow, to work with many, many more families. And we work with families who are having their first little one, maybe families who are having, their third, fourth, or fifth little one. We work with single family households households, single parent households, multiple parent households, families, mothers as young as kind of their teenage years, all the way up to their 40s. And so, we welcome all families who could benefit from the support. And so long as they're interested and feel like they can be in our program for the 3 years, we welcome them.
Now, part of the program relies on donations from generous volunteers and community members.
Yes.
How can people get involved, and what are accepted items for donations?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking that. So we rely so heavily on the generosity of our community to ensure that we have those baby goods to share with families. And all of the items that we receive are donated from the community. And so these are our families who have, their own kiddos items and that quickly outgrew and are still in amazing condition. And so we ask them to donate them to us because we can give those items a second life with other families who could use them. And all of those items, so to give you kind of a sense of context, we procure almost 500,000 items every year to distribute to the families in our program. And those items are processed and organized and sorted and cleaned by the helping hands of many volunteers. So we love it when folks come to our family center to help us sort all of those items and then distribute them as quickly as possible to families. And then please donate your items to us as well.
Can you quickly just let us know how, people can get involved and how they can learn more?
Yes, so if you go to our website, roomtogrow.org, you can find links to donate items, to volunteer, to support financially, to be a part of our program. You can apply directly through our website. There's a wealth of information there.
Well, I thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation. For me, this is the first time that I'm hearing about a program like this. And so it's, it's wonderful to, to learn a little bit more about some of the work that you do, especially for, infants and toddlers, because as I mentioned, I think for a lot of the stuff that focuses on children, it's usually school-age children.
Yes.
So this is wonderful. Can you just quickly let us know, your experience, in working in this, and, how it has impacted you in any way?
Yes, so prior to joining Room to Grow, I was a classroom teacher. I've taught kindergarten and first grade, and I would see firsthand the students who would come to my classroom not quite ready. And so, certainly I worked incredibly hard, as our teachers do, to help ensure that students, could catch up and be right where they need to be by the end of the school year. And have been working, my whole career in that space at various iterations of education. And so seeing a program that is working, and 9 out of 10 of our kiddos are achieving their milestones on time, and that is supporting the whole family was so exciting to me. And then I see the impact day in and day out.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate you welcoming us here. Thank you.
If you or someone you know are interested in the programs from Room to Grow, please go to their website at www.roomtogrow.org. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the Recablecast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Darren Hymie on Wednesday and with Rena Valentine on Friday. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.